Hi guys, and welcome to video number 4 in the drawing series. So far we've looked at how to draw objects in terms of simple shapes and how to draw the basic proportions. In this lesson what we're going to look at is how to shade the objects. So if you look at the objects that I've got in front of me here, just a bunch of simple things, you can see that each one of them has their own specific main tone. So this one's pretty light, sort of like whitish. This one's a little bit darker, something like a light middle tone. This one here is obviously pretty dark, so it's like this tone or getting close to black. And this one here is more like a middle tone. So today we're going to look at how to get those tones, how to use your pencil, and how to draw the shadows. So the first thing that you're going to need to do is get a piece of paper, a pencil, and also a couple of objects of various tones. So I'm going to ask you to pause the video while you go and get that. Great, so hopefully you've done that. Now the first exercise I'm going to get you to do before you start drawing the objects is to draw one of these. So what you're going to need to do is draw 5 squares. There's 3 big squares, one's black, one's white, and one's as near as you can get to halfway in between. Then when you've done those 3, the next thing you need to do is draw one that's a bit lighter and another one that's a little bit darker than this middle one. So like I said before, step 1, black, white and grey. Step 2 is draw the dark grey and then draw the light grey. So let's just pause the video while you have a go of that one. So hopefully you've done that now. Now what that's useful for is that when you're looking at objects, it's easy to get confused about what tone they are. But if you have one of these, like a little tonal scale, it's easy to sort of look at it and say, well, this white appears here, or this object here is mostly this light tone here. Whereas this object here is mostly that tone there, and so on. So let's go and begin on how we actually apply this. So to begin with, what you want to do is start just sort of sketching in the basic shapes of the objects, not worrying too much if they're exactly right or not, but just having a look at the relative size of one object to another object and how they all sort of clump together. And then if you've got it roughly in the ballpark, that's all that really matters, because this lesson's really just about tone. So let's pause the video while you do that to sketch out the objects. Okay, wonderful. Now, assuming you've done that, the next thing that you're going to need to do is just start with one object. So I'm going to start off with a pear here, and I've looked at the tonal map and I've decided that it's basically a middle tone, which is that one there, right in the middle. That's the main tone that appears on the pear. The thing is that you'll also notice that there's a few patches that are light. I don't want to make them middle tone because I need to leave them light, so I'm going to just be careful I'm turning my pencil sideways so it's almost flat on the paper. And that stops me getting too many pencil marks, and I'm just very lightly building up layers of shading. That way I can kind of gradually arrive at the tone I want rather than trying to get it all in one go. So starting lighter and then getting darker, because you can always go darker, but it's not that easy to go back the other way and make it lighter. Some people do smudge with their fingers, also gets rid of the pencil marks. Some people say you shouldn't do that. I don't mind it, especially in the first layers. Sort of fills it in, but don't get too carried away with it, I suppose. Okay, so that's roughly, still a bit light, so I could compare it to my original tone over here, compare it to the pear. Could be a little bit darker. Also, how things appear on the video, it's got a lot to do with the light meter as well, so a little bit different. Alright, I've left a bit of light where I see light on the pear. And then that's not finished, that's just what we call blocking in. But how about you just get started on that bit and pause the video while you do one object. And now that you've done that, what we're going to do is all of the other objects. So for each object, we're going to point at it, we're going to find the tone that matches it on the tonal scale. I'm going to say a dark mid-tone for the onion. probably a very light tone, light mid-tone for the potato, and very close to whites for the garlic. So let's go through step by step, one object at a time. And as you go, don't forget that you're going to need to leave the highlights blank. So don't color in where there's highlights or white bits, because you could always come back, I suppose, and use an eraser to rub them out, but it's easier just to leave them blank. Like I've done here with the onion, where I've left these bits white, which sort of shows the highlights there. You might find it easier to draw a little line just to remind yourself where you're going to leave the highlights. So let's begin with shading one object at a time, and let's just pause the video while you do another object. So you can see in this time I've used the potato and I've gone with a very, very light tone. The garlic is mostly white, but I'm going to find that there's also some of those tones on there as well. So you might just want to pause the video till you've coloured in all of your objects one basic tone each. So let's pause. And the next thing that you're going to want to do is start to put in some actual shades. So let's have a look at again at the pear. We can say, well, the pear, its original main tone is the middle tone, but when we look at the shadows, the darkest part of the pear, it's actually going as dark as maybe sort of a dark middle tone. So what I'm going to do there is, again, using the edge of my pencil and just very gently and slowly, probably in several layers, I'm going to go this way and that way, backwards and forwards, slowly building it up. Maybe change the direction of my pencil stroke a little bit, just so I don't get too many scratchy marks in one direction. And you notice I'm going pretty lightly and just slowly building it up, noticing that it gets darker and darker and darker towards the bottom of the pear there. Not trying to press too hard. Changing the direction of the pencil stroke and crisscrossing this way and that. And just very gently, as if you're just breathing on the tone, just very lightly and gently building it up, darker and darker and darker. Try to keep looking back. It's really, really important if you want to make it sort of look kind of realistic. It's really important to look at the object. The more you actually look at the object and say, where is that tone really? What does it really look like? It's not always what you think it looks like. So just keep looking back at the object, glancing backwards between the object and the thing you're drawing. That's the key to being able to draw it in a way that's convincing and that actually conveys what that particular object looks like. Because we've all got a picture in our mind what we think things look like. But when we look at them specifically, one particular object, that's when we bring it to life and make it a particular thing. And you'll notice I'm just going ever so slowly. I'm using the side of my pencil, and I'm kind of, and sometimes I'm even going around in little circles, because you definitely don't get brush pencil strokes if you do it that way. Also, it's a common beginner error to think that the shadows on one thing are going to be as dark as the shadows on another thing. The shadows on the darker objects are going to be a lot darker than the shadows on something that's a bit lighter. So the shadows on the garlic, for example, are really, really pretty light. They're only like about that light, whereas the shadows on the onion, which was already dark, go as dark as black. So once you sort of get your head around the idea that the beginning tone of an object, if it's light, it's going to have light shadows. If it's dark, it's going to have dark shadows. That changes things significantly. Just technically, you can also use the smudging thing with your fingers sometimes, but definitely don't overdo it, because you tend to end up just generalizing too much. You want to still keep things a little bit specific, otherwise it doesn't come to life. It's important to kind of keep in touch with the real object, not just the picture of that object you've got in your head. Okay, so maybe I'm going to pause and I'll let you guys catch up. So just looking at each object and looking at the tones, just gently building up the tones. And if you just persevere with that, I think you'll find that gradually the objects will start to take shape. The next thing that we're going to need to look at is something that's a little bit subtle, which is these shadows underneath the object. Again, the shadows themselves have a tone depending on the tone of the thing they're sitting on, but I'm going to say like this one here is roughly middle tone. This one might be a little touch darker, but just have a look at the rough shapes of those. And you don't really need to draw an outline, but you could, and then try to sketch those in. So I'm going to get you to pause the video in a sec after I do a quick demonstration. So here in the case of this pear, you can see the shadows are sort of like a kiwi shape, and it's definitely darker close to the pear, and then it kind of fades out. And the edges of it are really soft, so don't be afraid to sort of smudge a little bit. Use your pencil strokes, and even come back in with your eraser. Also, there's other parts in your picture where you might have lost a bit of a highlight. Don't be afraid to use your eraser just to pick them out. Again, too, get a bit of detail for some light things can be helpful. So have a go now. Maybe pause the video and just look at all of the shadows. See if you can sketch a few of those in. Okay, so pause. Okay, so once you've put in the shadows on the ground, that's basically it. I hope you've enjoyed that. Next week, we'll continue with some more information about tones and how to draw it with a biro and using lines. Please stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Thanks for joining us.